Thank you, Zach. Welcome, everybody, to Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas, coming your way from Sin City. The wages of sin is death. We are the secret suicide capital of the world, where suicides are not reported here, but in the hometown of where the people came from. And yet there's no other city I'd rather be in. As a pastor once told me, Jesus told us to go into the world and preach the gospel. But here in Vegas, the world comes to us. And Dan Fox and I are going to be on the MGM Bridge a little bit later on, handing out gospel tracts to those going in to see the Manny Pacquiao fight. Now, Manny's a professing born-again Christian, so the line we'll be using as we hand out tracts to the people will be, Manny would like you to read this. Manny would like you to read this. Manny would like you to read this. Oh, it's amazing how God gives you these lines sometime. And if Manny's a born-again Christian, he'd want them reading the track. Amen? Hey, if you'd like to get the newsletter, Dave Peff does such a good job on the newsletter, and you can get it every month by going to Trackman, TRACTMAN, Trackman TB at gmail.com. Trackman TB, as in tuberculosis, or my name, Tim Behrens, at gmail.com. And wait a couple issues. You should get it by then, but just contact him again if you have not received. Just Super Dave just does a fantastic job. Now, today is the 50th anniversary of when they say we walked on the moon, Apollo 11, but I will always remember Apollo 11 from the incident I had at Luchow's restaurant in New York City, 14th Street and Union Square. I made $3 an hour as a phone reservation clerk, and I had been trying to get into voiceovers after I'd been kicked out of Bob Jones for drinking 2 cans of Colt 45, and I had been there, and I thought, I'm going to call the news anchormen of all 3 networks and, see if they'll help me get into broadcasting. And I thought, now, if I use Tim Behrens, they're not going to talk to me. I'm going to use Alexander Scorby's name. And so I called ABC, and the operator said, network or local? I said, network. And this is the day of the Apollo 11 liftoff. And no answer. I wanted to speak to Frank Reynolds at ABC. And I thought, at NBC, I'll talk to Chet Huntley. He looks like it'd be easier to get to know than David Brinkley. So I called NBC. They said, network or local? I said, network. They connected me in. I said, I'd like to speak to David or Chet Huntley, please. Are you a personal friend? Yes. This is Alexander Scorby. Have him call me, 477-4860, and I gave Luchow's number. And what is it? 477-4860. Then I called CBS. The number for CBS in New York is 765-4321. I can still remember that. I can't remember where I put my keys a half hour ago, but I can remember that stupid number for CBS's a half a century ago. And they connected me in. I'd like to speak to Walter Cronkite, please. And they said, are you a personal friend? Yes, this is Alexander Scorby. So about 5 minutes later, I get a call, and I answered Luchow's good afternoon, Alexander. And I said, Chet. And I told him, my name's really not really Alexander Scorby, it's Tim Behrens, but I'd like to get an appointment to see about getting into broadcasting. He said, well, we're up to our necks with this Apollo 11 liftoff right now. Can you call next week? And he suggested going back and starting at a local station. And then I got another call making a reservation. Then I got another call, answered the phone. Luchow's good afternoon, Alexander. Walter, it just blew me away, and that he was calling. And I said, Walter, my name's not really Alexander Scorby, but it's Tim Behrens. But I knew if I told that lady at the switchboard, my name is Tim Behrens, you wouldn't bother calling me. Well, you picked a heck of a time to call. We're up to our next with this Apollo 11 liftoff right now. Call me next week. So I finally got a hold of him the following week. Had to go through 5 people that time. Got a hold of him, Mr. Cronkite. Yes. Tim Behrens. Oh, yes. What was that concerning? Broadcasting. You really helped me get into broadcasting. Yeah, the more I've thought about that, the more despicable I think that was. That was a pretty sleazy trick to pull. We don't need newsmen of that caliber in our business. We already have too many of them. I said, well, you will admit, had I used my proper name, you wouldn't have talked to me. Well, you did it the wrong way, Anyway, so the next night, I get a reservation call, party of 2 at 7:30, Walter Cronkite of CBS. And I thought, wow. And I worked behind the kitchen. And about 8:30, one of the waiters came back and said, Cronkite went up to Lipey, the manager, and said, "You must have some kind of nut on those phones. If I were you, I'd dump them." Anyway, always tell the truth, folks. I wasn't living for the Lord, and I don't recommend you do that to anybody. But that's what I remember about Apollo 11 liftoff, not the moon landing. Well, Tom Hammond, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Tom Hammond has put together a book entitled "What Time is Purple?" I know we're going to ask him about the title and other intriguing questions on the road to truth. I have given out a bunch of these books to many lawyers' offices. I'm hoping to get another case to get the rest of the lawyers in town. I've given them to some homeless, too, because homeless aren't always dumb people. I met a homeless guy the other day who's a PhD. But this is a short booklet. It's kind of an abbreviated evidence that demands a verdict that Josh McDowell wrote. It's done very well. And Tom, first of all, what's a nice fellow like you doing in a faith like this?
Well, I was born in church. I'm one of those people that kind of had to step away from it and just examine it to know that I wasn't just caught up in a tradition that I was born into, and had to search my way through that. There's a lot of folks like me.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes am jealous of the people that have these dramatic born again experiences.
Yep.
But it's for some of us, it's a little different path,
Right. I still remember Sally Wilson, the daughter of T.W. Wilson, who was Billy Graham's right-hand man when I was working for Billy's station back in 1971, saying how jealous she was of Rick Carino, a former Hells Angels testimony, because she had been born and raised in the church. But what do you say to those who don't have those exciting testimonies right now who are listening?
I say to them, be strong in the Lord. A lot of people will throw the argument at Christians that, well, you're just a Christian because you were born into a Christian home.
Right.
And we can come right back with that. We can ask, well, were your parents atheists? If they say yes, I can say, well, you're just an atheist because you were born in an atheistic home. So we really don't get at the truth with that.
Right.
Christianity is either true or it isn't, and just to paraphrase C.S. Lewis, if it's true, it's the most important thing that we have to come to know. If it's not, it's of no use to any of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm holding in my hand your book, What Time is Purple, and I know everybody listening is wondering, what did you call your book, What Time is Purple, for?
Well, we were Todd Friel, for those of your listeners who are familiar with his ministry, Wretched. Yep. Mm-hmm. He and I were going back and forth with some title ideas, and I had made just a short argument there in the book for the absurdity of asking the question, what is the probability that a God exists or that God exists? Mm-hmm. It's a nonsensical question. There is no probability to a question like that. And I said it's akin to asking what time is purple. And I don't know. I just I guess you could say I used that title because I couldn't think of anything better. But it's kind of catchy. It makes people wonder what's inside, and that's about the best answer I have, really.
You deal with this in your book, but what do you say to people who say, who created God?
Yeah, that goes back to just a pretty common sense work of logic there. You have to have one first uncaused cause for there to be anything else. And Aristotle figured this out centuries ago. He called it the unmoved mover. But something cannot just come out of absolutely nothing. You've got to pick one thing that has been here since eternity past. Now, the atheist, the person with the naturalistic worldview, they're going to postulate that it was matter or energy or a combination of that in space, and somehow it just kind of exploded into reality. But something has to have existed from eternity past, and what Purple tries to do is show why the atheistic worldview, why postulating that matter, space, and energy is really not a plausible answer to that.
What are the chances that we just came into everything from nothing? What are the chances of that?
It's got to be zero. I mean, it's just, and when we talk about nothing, that's something else. Something else a lot of people are confused about. When we say nothing, we mean absolutely nothing. There's no vacuum. There's no energy. There's no subatomic particles just laying around waiting to be energized. When we say nothing, we're saying that space doesn't even exist, and to postulate that something just comes out of that is ridiculous. So a lot of atheists would make the argument that that nothing really has to be considered something. And when we start getting off into those kind of areas, when we have to start using those kinds of arguments, it really leaves us out there just, I hate to use the word common sense, but I mean, it just defies any rationale.
Right, right. Well, then what about Jesus? Why is he so special? Why? I mean, there have been many great leaders, religious leaders, haven't there been? And why him over all the others?
Well, and any historian, Christian or non-Christian, simply cannot come up with any other figure in human history that's had the impact of the life of Jesus Christ. And I make arguments there in purple, and of course a lot of apologists make a lot of these same arguments. But if you just want to start with the simple fact that most of Western civilization and thought has all come from his teachings, just the fact that church was started in the city he was executed within just weeks of that execution, where in the very city that put him to death, the people who were there at Pentecost, the people who were founded the church, they had seen the risen Lord. There can be no other plausible explanation for why they would endeavor to do such a thing as start a church at the risk of death.
I've heard a pastor say there's more evidence for Christ. I mean, there are more people that observed Christ after he rose from the dead than there were people that saw the assassination of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. And I mean, there are over 1 billion people who are following a man who married a 9-year-old, killed over 800 people in his life, and said just before he died, I don't know if I'm going to make it to paradise or not. You would think that they would investigate the resurrection. Why are there so many Muslims that believe this? Is it they're afraid of being killed if they leave the family? I mean, leave the religion?
Well, of course, the answer is Paul told us we're not warring against flesh and blood. We're warring against the very forces of hell. And this belief system, and I'm not just talking about Islam. I'm talking about several other worldviews. It finds its foothold in the fallen human mindset and heart, and it's a satanic thing. This is not human rationale. I'm like you. You would think could see through that and want to investigate it, but Satan blinds our minds, blinds our eyes and our thinking.
I remember a friend of mine who just passed away here recently, Dr. Robert Morey, used to say, whenever you meet an atheist, always ask them, who hurt you? Who hurt you? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, to some extent. I think there's also atheists, they have a real fear that God does exist. They don't want God to exist. That was the mistake I made when I started studying apologetics 30 years ago. I really thought, Tim, I said, people want to believe in God, just no one has shown them the evidence to convince them that it's okay, that it's the intelligent conclusion.
Right.
And a hard lesson I had to learn over the years in presenting the arguments for the existence of God and for the deity of Christ and so on and so forth was running into the people who do not want to believe. And that was a mistake I made as a very young man. I thought people wanted to. They don't want to.
Right, right. Years ago, I did an interview with Linus Pauling, who had the only scientist to win 2 Nobel Prizes in the 20th century. He'd written this book, Cancer and Vitamin C. He was in his 90s. And I said, and we would do this. I worked for a Christian station. We'd talk to the celebrities about their book or whatever, as long as it wasn't raunchy, for about 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, and then would get around to this question. I said, Dr. Pauling, let me change the subject a little bit. I said, what do you think about Jesus? He was a great man. I said, but he was a liar? He said, what? I said, C.S. Lewis said he's either Lord, liar, or lunatic. And I don't ever remembering mentioning C.S. Lewis on my program ever before. And he comes back with, C.S. Lewis was a friend of mine. I thought, oh my goodness. But really, that's what it adds up to, doesn't it? He's either Lord, liar, or lunatic.
He's all or nothing.
Yep.
And again, I'll go back to his quote earlier. Christianity is either the most important thing in all the world, or it's the least important thing in all the world.
Right.
And it's either there's no middle ground with Christianity. It's either true, and if it's true, you better sit up and listen.
Yep. If
it's not true, then we who call ourselves Christian are to be pitied of all fools.
Yep.
But you cannot account for reality. You cannot account for the moral condition of man. You cannot account for so many things apart from the truth of Christianity.
What's so cool is that when you're walking with the Lord, when you love the Lord, you don't have to have the fear of dying. I remember we were in Ciudad Juarez. Ciudad Juarez is we saw one American tourist when we were in that border town opposite El Paso, Texas. A lot of women are kidnapped. Cartel is just very, very busy there. And just the peace that just comes with knowing you're doing what the Lord wants you to do. We're handing out gospel tracts. And one of my favorite verses in Luke 10:19, behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. I mean, to know that somebody shoots you and you're home with heaven. I mean, you can't threaten a Christian with heaven. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Oh, death, where is your sting?
Yeah, exactly.
But ironically, you talking about that, ironically, I actually think that a lot of atheists to not believe in God is how they deal with the fear of death.
Yeah.
It's how they eliminate any idea of accountability.
Right.
That they're going to have to stand up and be judged for their deeds, and the fear of that is so overwhelming that they are able to just dismiss the idea that God exists in order to deal with that.
What do you say, and we're talking with Tom Hammond, who's authored the book, What Time is Purple, and other intriguing questions on the road to truth. What do you say to that person who's listening here in the secret suicide capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, and they want assurance that their life really does have purpose and meaning because they're thinking about taking it? What would you say to them?
I would say to them, first and foremost, they are going to consciously exist for all eternity. That if they're contemplating suicide, that is only going to end a conscious existence in this dimension or in this world. They are going to exist beyond that, and that any feelings of failure they have, any feelings that they haven't lived up to a certain mark, they need to know we're all in that same state. Every one of us. You were, Tim, I was.
Amen.
We're not going to measure up.
Right.
And God sees our condition, and He has offered salvation. It's grace, but it's not cheap grace.
No.
There was a heavy penalty paid for our sin, but God paid it for us.
Right.
And just do know there is going to be a conscious existence beyond the grave.
Yeah.
And we can spend that with the God of all goodness, of all righteousness, of all love, of all mercy, of all peace, or we can spend that separated from Him in what Scripture describes as eternal torment.
Amen. Amen. How can people get a copy of What Time Is Purple, Tom Hammond?
They can. There's a website for a free download if they don't have a copy, and it's just simply whattimeispurple.com. And then if they want to get, and we give free copies at this site. Todd Friel's ministry is handling it. And you can go directly to the book. You can go to wretched.org/purple. And if you want more than 20 copies, if you've got a ministry, you're going to hand out more than 20 copies, there's a way to do that. It'll tell you how to do it. We don't turn many down. We've had a few vacation Bible schools who were going to hand these out to 4th, 5th, and 6th graders that we told them that probably wouldn't be a good resource for children of that age. Yeah. But Al Yerkes is who handles it there in Atlanta. If you'll tell him what you're going to do with the books, if you want a couple of hundred copies, and you just kind of tell him what the plan is, we haven't turned anybody down.
Okay, that's wretched.org/purple.
Correct.
Very good. Tom Hammond, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm looking forward to getting another case and getting them out to some of the more of the lawyers here in town.
I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate all you do, Tim.
Thank you, brother. God bless you. You too. Me too.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Bye-bye. All right, and Brandon will have that up, today's interview up here soon. He's had some problems with his internet. He did post the Jack McElroy interview that we had last Saturday, and you can hear that at just go to YouTube, Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas, Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas. And if you'd like to get the monthly newsletter that Super Dave puts out, just go to Trackman, Trackman TB, as in Tim Behrens, at gmail.com, trackmantb@gmail.com. And be praying for Dan Fox and I as we hit the MGM Bridge in a couple of hours, handing out gospel tracts. We're going to hand out Men of Peace, ? You can read that by Googling Chick Communications and then Men of Peace, ? And we'll also hand out ICU, and you can read that at chick.com. But we can't do it without your prayers. Thank you so much for your prayers and support. And, man, I had a situation the other day where I had somebody standing on my chest for about 25 minutes. And, Lord, I got 10 more years to go before this happens. So I took a couple cloves of garlic and I was fine. But thank you so much for your prayers. God bless you. Keep on the firing line. And remember 1 Corinthians 15:58, therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. If you're suicidal, go to fullyfreefilms.com, and watch the movie Exit. I want to see you later. Bye-bye.
Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray, hallelujah. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Keep me burning till the break of day. I will sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King. Oh yeah. for the Lord. Give me gas for my Ford, I pray. Hallelujah. Give me gas for my Ford. Keep me trucking for the Lord. Keep me trucking till the break of day. Oh yeah. Sing